So these are the brain's left and right cerebral hemispheres. These two hemispheres are connected by the corpus callosum, a dense bundle of fiber nerves. The corpus callosum is located in the middle of the brain. It is approximately 10 centimeters in length and looks like the letter C. The corpus callosum allows the brain signals to travel between hemispheres. Now, what would happen if the corpus callosum was severed? What will happen to the brain? And what's going to happen to the patient? So in this video, we will answer the question, what is it like to be a split brain patient? Per APA Dictionary, split brain is a brain in which the two cerebral hemispheres have been separated by partial or complete destruction of the corpus callosum. Severing of corpus callosum is usually done as a last option to treat epilepsy that cannot be controlled by medicine. Commissurotomy is a surgical procedure involving a partial severing of corpus callosum. A complete sectioning of the corpus callosum is called callosectomy. And it is now suggested that whenever possible, commissurotomies be done instead of callosectomies. Since this surgery has helped people with severe and uncontrollable epilepsy, researchers have been able to look into the different parts of each hemisphere, and it was Roger Sperry, the first person to do research in this area. These all happened in the 1950s and 1960s. Roger Sperry did tests on cats, monkeys, and humans in the US to study how the two sides of the brain work differently. Ginawa niya to by studying the corpus callosum. Pinutol ni Sperry ang corpus callosum ng pusa at monkey para mapag-aralan kung paano gumagana ang bawat part ng brain. After this, he found out that if the two sides of the brains were not linked, kaya pa rin itong mag-function independently. Kaya tinawag niya itong split brain o divided brain. Later, Sperry tried the same idea on people by cutting their corpus callosums as a way to treat epilepsy para maiwasan o matigil na yung pag-seizure nila. Si Sperry, naniniwala siya na kapag inalis ang corpus callosum, it would have serious implications. Kaya he designed a corpus callosum severance test. He recognized that each brain hemisphere controls movement and vision on the opposite side. Ibig sabihin, the right hemisphere controls the left eye and the left hemisphere controls the right eye. He learned that the two sides of human brains do different things. The left side on the brain understood words, but the right side did not. However, pioneering split brain experiments performed with Joseph Bogen and Michael Gazzaniga, they showed that the right cerebral hemisphere has language abilities too and can perform visual-spatial tasks better than the left one. Si Sperry, sobrang laki ng contribution niya in the field of neurobiology. Kaya naman nanalo siya ng Nobel Prize noong 1981 for his discoveries on functional specialization of the hemispheres. Kasama niyang nanalo sina David Hubel and Thorsten Wiesel for their studies on visual information processing. Dr. Gazzaniga, one of the best brain scientists in the world, and Joe, with two brains, they started working together after Joe had surgery to fix an epilepsy problem. Per Joe, he had seizures 2 or 3 times a day. His epilepsy has been under control after the surgery, and his left and right hemispheres do not affect his daily life. You can see that a man was given the instructions to draw what he saw on the screen. And yes, it was challenging for him. In this experiment in a normal brain, the left side of the body controls the right side of the brain, and the right side of the body controls the left side of the brain. Nothing is wrong in this experiment because the two sides of the brain are linked. It is hard to get each hand to work on its own. But when the same task was given to Joe, his two hands moved as if they were controlled by two different brains. Para tong may kanya-kanyang instructions. Sabi ng right hemisphere, you do this, and the left hemisphere also, you do this. Sinabihan niya si Joe na to focus his eyes on the cross in the middle of the screen. Anything flashing on the right side of the screen only goes to the right hemisphere, and anything on the left goes to the left hemisphere. Since they don't talk to each other, each hand can only do what half of the brain can see. The split brain study has been helpful to the fields of psychology and neuroscience. These studies help experts learn more about how different parts of the brain work together, kung paano na-process ang language, yung role of the corpus callosum, the cognition, and even what it means to be aware or the consciousness. 1 in 4,000 people is born without a corpus callosum. Agenesis of the corpus callosum is a congenital brain malformation in which yung brain structure failed to develop during the embryonic growth. There was a study, neuroscientists sila from the University of Geneva. They discovered that when corpus callosum is missing, the brain reorganizes itself and creates an impressive number of connections inside of each hemispheres. In other words, nagkakaroon ng intrahemispheric connection sa ibang regions of the brain using alternative neural pathways. And surprisingly, there's still contact between the two hemispheres. According to that study, 25% of people with agenesis of the corpus callosum have no visible signs. 50% have average intelligence quotients and learning difficulties. And the remaining 25% suffer from severe cognitive disorders. But what about people who have had their corpus callosum severed? Can they live without it? Well, Sperry came to the conclusion that even though there were no obvious signs of disability in people with severed corpus callosum, the hemispheres did not communicate at dahil dito, it compromised the full function of the brain. For example, the two halves of our visual field which are processed separately in each hemisphere cannot be put together. Also, connecting to the visual cortex to the language centers of the brain doesn't help people figure out what they're looking at.